Most people use a leash to keep their dog close to them or prevent them from running away, but what they don't understand is that the leash is actually the most powerful tool in all of dog training. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to use a leash to communicate with your dog effectively throughout the training process. So the first thing, what type of leash should you get? Well, my favorite type of leash to use in the very beginning stages of the training is just a standard 6-foot biothane leash, okay? No stretchy leashes, rope leashes, over the shoulder, hands-free, bungee, none of those leashes. Just a standard 6-foot biothane leash that has no flex or give to it. And my favorite is the ones with the lobster clasp, all right? You see that clasp there, the lobster? These are my favorite ones. And so just 6 feet, these are good. 6 to 10 feet is like a good range, but these are the best ones to use in the beginning of the training. Later on in the training, we'll utilize a longer leash, like a 30-foot long line or a 50-foot long line, even a flexi leash, just to give the dog more room and more freedom. But in the very beginning stage of the training, I recommend starting out just on a standard 6-foot biothane leash. It's very short. It's easy to manage as a beginner. It's easy to make directional pressure into all the fundamental behaviors. So I recommend starting out with this first. Now, the next thing, a lot of you guys have learned to hold the leash like this because your dogs are pulling like crazy, and so you just walk out the house like this, just like preemptively ready, you know? Or you see another dog and you just start hitting one of these, you know? We do not want to be doing that, okay? This doesn't give you a whole lot of control, and you're actually just using it to hold the dog back, essentially. So here's how I want you to be holding the leash throughout the training. To hold the leash, you take the handle like this, and then all you do is you slip your thumb through it like this, and then you close your fist around it. That's it, okay? So just to show you again, you got the handle like this, insert your thumb, and then you grip, all right? This grip just gives you an unbreakable grip. You can't break this, it's not gonna slip out, it doesn't hurt either. And so this is the best way to grip the leash. It gives you maximum control. Now, if you want to make a shorter grip on the leash, it's the same exact thing. You just pick a point on the leash, you loop your thumb through it, and then you grip. That's it, and now you have a shorter leash. So let's say, for example, you know, maybe you're walking on a sidewalk or like a narrow alley or like something like that, and you need to temporarily give your dog shorter leash. Then all you do is you just pick a point on the leash and then grip it just like that, okay? So no like just loose grips like this, because it'll slip through your hands and give you rope burn on your hands, and none of this stuff either, okay? Just pick a point, practice with both hands, just practice gripping it like this, okay? It's the best practice. So when the leash is attached to your dog, you need to be holding it like this, just like how I showed you, and they should have the whole 6 feet for the vast majority of the time, generally speaking. You shouldn't be holding it like this, okay? I don't want to see you guys walking around the neighborhood like this, okay? They should have the whole leash, the whole 6 feet. They can be in front, behind, to the side, doesn't particularly matter. They've got the whole leash. Now you might be wondering, Miles, what do I do if my dog is constantly stepping on the leash and it gets tangled up and stuff like that? Well, I can use my other hand just as a guide. See how like that? See how it can flow freely between my hand like this? I'm not choking up on it and making pressure on it all the time. It's just sitting between my hand, but the dog still has the whole 6 feet of the leash, right? If I make pressure, it's still coming from the end, all right? This is just when you're walking around the neighborhood, things like that. The reason why it's so important that you're not always choking up on the leash and the dog doesn't feel pressure all the time is because we're gonna be using the leash to attach consequences to certain behaviors. And if the dog is always feeling tension on the leash the whole time during the walk, it's useless from a training standpoint. And so if your dog is constantly pulling on the leash, don't worry, I'll show you how to fix that later. But for right now, what you need to know is that during the walk, the leash should be loose. There should be no tension on the leash. So there are 2 primary ways that we'll be using the leash throughout the training process. The first way we'll be using it is to negatively reinforce behaviors. And the second way we'll be using it is to positively punish behaviors. So let me show you what it looks like to negatively reinforce behaviors. And negative reinforcement, in case you don't know, is the removal of an aversive stimulus that increases the frequency of a behavior. And if you want a more detailed breakdown on all of that stuff, go ahead and watch this video up next that breaks down how dogs learn and think. So let's go ahead and walk around and let me show you what this looks like in action. So you'll see that if I make pressure up on the leash, watch what he does. You see how he sits? Why did he sit there? He's learned that when he feels pressure up on the leash, aversive stimulus, he's learned that to escape that pressure, all he has to do is sit and then it goes away. That's it. I'll show you another example. There, he feels pressure down on the leash, and so he just downs, and then it goes away. You see? That's negative reinforcement. Now, you might be wondering, Miles, Why is that important? That doesn't seem very useful. So in the beginning stages of training, we teach the dog how to sit, down, come, heel, place, all of that stuff with just the leash. Just the leash. The dog should know how to do all of those behaviors with no words. The reason that's so important is because later on in the training, when your dog is outside in the real world around actual distractions, there are going to be moments and many times where you tell them to do something and they don't. So what are you going to do, right? This is the critical piece that so many of you guys are missing. You've taught all of the basic behaviors with positive reinforcement. Your dog knows everything, but it falls apart when it actually matters and you don't have any way to reinforce it. Negative reinforcement is the missing link. You guys want reliability in your training. The way that you do that is through a combination of both positive and negative reinforcement. This will not only make your training reliable, your behaviors reliable, but it will also make your communication so much more clear because your dog will now understand that when they hear a command, the only possible outcome is them hitting the behavior. Does that make sense? So when you say sit, the only outcome that's possible is for them to eventually sit. They're either gonna get there on their own and they're gonna get rewarded, or they will ignore you and then you will make pressure into the sit and they will learn in that moment, oh, the commands are non-negotiable. Oh, I have to sit every single time. And this will transfer across all of the behaviors. That is so much more clear for your dog as opposed to this just like, ambiguous, should I sit? Is what's in it for me? Is there, what else is going on around here? Should I listen to them or not? I hear the command, I do it. It's the only possible outcome. And for you nerds out there who might be wondering like, wait, Miles, you said that negative reinforcement was the removal of something that increases a behavior. Didn't you add pressure, right? Didn't you add pressure into the sit there? Wasn't that punishment, right? Wasn't that positive? And so to answer that question, it's a very common confusion point for a lot of nerds out there. In practical application, what it is the dog fundamentally, when you make pressure like this, it's the removal of the pressure that increases the behavior. That's the key difference, is the dog can escape it. Does that make sense? So even if an aversive is applied, the dog can learn to escape it and then the pressure goes away. That's the behavior that was reinforced. Does that make sense? So it's the removal of the pressure that increased the behavior of sitting. I didn't punish him for standing. So that's what negative reinforcement looks like when you're using a leash. But now let me show you some examples of what positive punishment could look like. So now I'm gonna show you guys how to positively punish a behavior utilizing the leash. I'm gonna walk you through a couple different examples. So positive punishment is the application of an aversive stimulus that creates a reduction in the frequency of behavior. So something is added and a behavior decreases. That's it, okay? So one of the things that we have you punish in the very beginning stage of the training is the leash pulling, when your dog pulls onto the leash. So how we do that in the loose leash walking process that we show you is when your dog pulls into the leash, when they're at the end and they feel that tension at the end of the leash and they pull into it, what we have you do is create slack in the leash and then pop backwards, okay? So just to show you that again, the dog is out ahead of you, you're out on your walk, that's your dog walking around, they feel the end of the leash and they pull into it, you create slack and then pop backwards. Now, the whole sequence is very quick, okay? So I highly recommend practicing this before you try this on your dog. So what it would look like is just like this. You're out walking, dog pulls into the leash, quick. They're pulling, quick. It's very fast, right? The reason why it has to be fast in this specific context is because we want the dog to learn that when they feel the end of the leash and they pull into it, consequence. That way they avoid the behavior of pulling altogether, right? So just to show you guys again, the mechanics, I'll walk you guys through slow motion. When they're at the end of the leash and they're pulling into it in slow motion, it looks like this. I'm moving my hand forward and then I'm quickly snapping back and then back to slack. All right, so watch, when I'm walking the dog, I'm not walking them out like this. Okay, I don't walk my dog like this, arm extended like this. It's very difficult to have any real leverage, right? So I keep the leash relatively close to my body like this. And then when I feel the dog make tension on the leash and they pull into it, I'll very quickly move my hand forward, snap back, okay? So just to show you guys again, it's very quick. They pull, pop. They pull, pop. They pull, pop, right? And so you know you're doing it correctly. I highly recommend you go out and practice this because the mechanic is very awkward if you've never done this before and you're used to just being dragged around the whole time on the walk. So recommend practicing. You know you're doing it right when you can back to back to back to back to back. It should feel very easy, right? If you're like very clunky with it and it's like, for some reason I can only, and it looks like this, you need to practice, okay? It should look like this. Now, another thing I want you to practice is practice modulating the amount of pressure that you're making. So practice very, very light, practice in between, practice a lot, heavy, right? The reason why this is important is because throughout the training process, one of the skills that you will have to acquire is learning how to modulate the level of pressure that you're applying to your individual dog. For example, for a behavior like the loose leash walking with the punishing the leash pulling, some dogs, literally all you have to do is just, they pull on the leash one time and you go, and they're like, I'm never gonna do that again. Literally, you just go like this, right? For other dogs, you might have to have a bit more of a consequence for them to interpret it the same exact way. And then for other dogs, it might be right? Significantly more of a consequence for pulling into that leash to the point where they understand, oh, okay, that was a bad idea. I'm not gonna do that again. You see, the amount of pressure that you're using doesn't actually matter. All that matters is how the dog interprets that and whether or not it creates a reduction in the behavior. That's why it's so important that you as the handler learn how to read the dog's response and modulate the level of pressure that you're using accordingly. Now, that's just for the loose leash walking. Like fundamentally, all you should do is when you do this correctly, you should see a sharp reduction in the behavior of leash pulling. That's how you know you punished it, right? If you go out and do this and your dog is just like still pulling, just the same, right? Then it's either an intensity issue, right? Like you need to increase the pressure substantially because obviously you're not achieving it's obviously is not decreasing the behavior, or it's a technique issue. And maybe your timing is way off, for example, but that's separate for the loose leash walking. Fundamentally, all you need to know is that if you're using the leash to positively punish a behavior and you're adding something aversive, you should be decreasing a behavior. So whatever that is, whether it's your dog is pulling on the leash, they're jumping on somebody, they're barking and lunging at another dog across the street, whatever it is, if you're utilizing the leash in this way, you should be seeing a reduction in the frequency of the behavior. This is just a high-level overview on how we use the leash to communicate with our dogs. If your dog is still pulling you on the leash, go ahead and watch this video up next where we show you exactly how to stop your dog's leash pulling right here.